What if everything we thought we knew about our solar system was fundamentally wrong? What if the greatest Anunnaki prophecy is unfolding right now, not in some dusty ancient scroll, but splashed across our night sky in real time? For decades, the myth of Techi, Nibiru, the destructive rogue planet, home to ancient extraterrestrial gods, has been relegated to the realm of fantasy and fringe history. But today, the conversation is changing. Today, we are looking at a celestial body, tracked by the world's most advanced systems, that perfectly fits the profile of the ancient Omen they warned us about, the sign of the Pabi forbidden awakening. This story begins not with mythological tablets, but with a seemingly innocuous discovery made by the Atlas, Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System telescope. Astronomers initially flagged it as Comet C2019Y4, or simply 3I Atlas. But almost immediately, 3I Atlas proved itself to be anything but standard. It rapidly brightened, displaying a luminosity that dwarfed expectations. Before doing something truly baffling, it began to spectacularly and violently disintegrate. This wasn't the natural decay of an icy space rock. This was an event that shattered the predictable models of astrophysics and launched the entire astronomical community into a quiet state of confusion. But for those studying the forbidden history of Sumer and the controversial work of Zecharia Sitchin, that fragmentation wasn't confusion. It was recognition. It was the signal. We are talking about the Anunnaki, the beings described in the clay tablets of Mesopotamia, the alleged architects of human civilization who supposedly journeyed here from their home world, Nibiru, often dubbed Planet X. According to the law, their highly elliptical orbit brings them into our vicinity approximately every 3,600 years. And when they come, they bring cataclysm, resource extraction, or potentially a complete reordering of human society. For generations, the biggest question has been, how would we know when they are near? The answer, according to the ancient priests, was simple. Look for the star that breaks apart, a star that behaves unnaturally, a celestial body that heralds the crossing. And that brings us back to 3I Atlas. Its trajectory, its rapid, unnatural disintegration, and its overall behavior are unnervingly consistent with the Sumerian concept of the Anunnaki Omen. The official narrative dismisses it as a peculiar but ultimately harmless comet. But the sheer panic in the conspiracy sphere, fueled by leaked trajectory analyses and the sudden conspicuous silence from key astronomical figures, suggests something far more sinister. Why are we seeing unprecedented monitoring of deep space right now? Why is the discussion of rogue planets, once ridiculed, creeping back into high-level scientific journals? The timing of this cosmic anomaly is perhaps the most chilling detail. As global instability reaches a fever pitch, as we grapple with unprecedented societal shifts, a non-standard object from the outer reaches of our solar system appears, behaving exactly as the ancient texts predicted the herald of the Anunnaki would behave. Are we watching the prelude to a forbidden awakening? Is this disintegrating comet merely debris kicked up by the nearing gravitational pull of Nibiru? Or is it something far more intentional, perhaps even a controlled object designed to announce the return? The implications are staggering. If this omen is genuine, then everything we cherish, every pillar of modern society, is built on a lie maintained since the dawn of time. Get ready, because we are about to decode the true meaning behind the Anunnaki Omen and the chilling evidence found in the astronomical data of 3I Atlas. You need to see the trajectory analysis for yourself to truly grasp the gravity of this situation. Before we dive deeper into the forbidden mathematics and the startling visual parallels between 3I Atlas and the Sumerian winged disk, I need to know something. Are you ready for the truth? Because the evidence we are about to uncover is potentially world-altering, and the only way to ensure this crucial information bypasses the digital gatekeepers is through your engagement. If you are intrigued by the idea that history's greatest secret might be revealing itself in the night sky, hit that like button immediately. It takes 1 second, but it tells the algorithm that this isn't just another conspiracy theory. This is important, fact-based inquiry that needs to be seen. Crucially, I want to hear your thoughts. Have you followed the Nibiru or Anunnaki theories before? Does the arrival of 3i Atlas feel like a coincidence or an undeniable sign? Drop your theories in the comment section below right now. Let's create a community repository of knowledge around this forbidden awakening. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve, ensure you are subscribed and have the notification bell turned on, because the next phase of this revelation might be happening sooner than you think. Now let's dissect the evidence. The real intrigue surrounding 3i Atlas begins when you move past the simplistic explanation of just a comet and start comparing its behavior to what the ancients described. We're not talking about generalized prophecies. We are talking about specific, detailed accounts recorded in cuneiform clay tablets that are thousands of years old. The Sumerians, the foundational civilization of Mesopotamia, were obsessed with the cosmos. Their records, especially those relating to the Duga, heavenly path, and the Sa, orbital cycle, describe a monumental celestial body that breaks the conventional rules of the sky, a star that shatters when it enters our sphere of influence, signifying the impending arrival of the Chinj Anunnaki and their gravitational behemoth, Nibiru. Comet 3i Atlas, discovered in 2019, exhibited precisely this terrifying behavior. Initially, it looked like a promising, bright comet heading our way. Then, in April 2020, as it approached the inner solar system, it literally tore itself apart. Now, comets fragment sometimes, but 3i Atlas didn't just break up. It fragmented into dozens of distinct pieces along an almost impossibly narrow trajectory. The official scientific explanation suggested thermal stress or perhaps structural instability due to its sheer size. But for the researchers tracking the Anunnaki Omen, this explanation doesn't hold weight. Why? Because the fragmentation was too dramatic, too symmetrical, and it occurred at a distance where thermal forces alone shouldn't have been so catastrophic. It looked less like something breaking apart from internal heat, and more like something being shaken apart by an external, massive gravitational tide. This brings us directly to the concept of Nibiru, or Planet X. According to Zecharia Sitchin's controversial translation of the Sumerian texts, Nibiru is a massive brown dwarf or gas giant on a highly eccentric 3,600-year orbit that takes it far beyond Pluto, only to loop back through the inner solar system. When a planet of that size approaches, even if it is still far out in the Kuiper belt, its sheer gravitational presence can cause observable chaos in the Oort cloud and the outer solar system. Think of it like this. If you gently shake a jar of marbles, some fragments will be thrown off in specific, violent directions. 3i Atlas, originating from the farthest reaches of our system, behaving erratically, and then spectacularly disintegrating, that looks exactly like a piece of cosmic debris violently agitated by an approaching immense gravitational source. This comet wasn't just passing, it was announcing the gravitational field of the far-forbidden awakening. Furthermore, the imagery associated with the Sumerian account is strikingly specific. The Anunnaki were often symbolized by the winged disk, a symbol deeply embedded in Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and later Assyrian iconography. When you look closely at the initial Hubble images of 3i Atlas as it began to break apart, what did you see? Not a simple puff of dust, but a highly defined, almost structured plume emanating from the core. often described by observers as bearing an uncanny resemblance to the ancient winged structure, albeit purely through the distribution of the fragmented comet trails. Was this a mere pareidolia, a trick of the eye, or was this physical proof that the very geometry of the celestial event was mirroring the ancient prophecies of the Anunnaki? Consider the implications of this silence from the scientific community. When an object behaves so far outside the standard model, you expect an explosion of peer-reviewed papers and urgent research. Instead, after the initial flurry, the subject of 3i Atlas essentially vanished from mainstream media and high-level astronomical discussions. Why the sudden pivot to dismissal? Skeptics say it's because it was just a comet that faded. Believers, those steeped in the lore of planet Exana, suggest it's because the implications of its trajectory and fragmentation were too sensitive. If the calculations suggested that 3i Atlas was indeed pulled apart by the influence of a large rogue body heading into the plane of the ecliptic, that would confirm the existence of Nibiru and trigger a global panic that governments are desperate to avoid. The cover-up would be immediate, efficient, and complete. The key to understanding the full context lies in decoding the forbidden awakening. This isn't just about an astronomical event, it's about the return of the alleged gods who engineered human existence. The Sumerian tablets suggest that when the Anunnaki return, they do so either to restart their mining operations, perhaps for gold, crucial to their atmosphere, or far more chillingly, to judge the progress of their creation. If 3i Atlas truly is the Omen, then the next few decades could see the complete restructuring of our civilization. This is why we need absolute clarity on the object's origin. Was it truly just an icy lump from the Oort cloud, or does its highly unusual orbit and catastrophic breakup point to a dark, massive presence pulling the strings from the outer darkness? We are approaching the next critical point in this investigation: the actual orbital mechanics of 3i Atlas and how they overlap with alleged ancient star charts. This is where the conspiracy shifts from prophecy to physics. But before we cross that threshold, I want to hear from you. Do you think the scientific community intentionally downplayed the significance of 3i Atlas, or do you believe it was simply a natural anomaly? Let me know in the comments by typing Nibiru now. If you think this is proof of the approaching rogue planet, or type Comet Chaos. If you believe it's just a strange piece of space ice, your input drives this investigation. Now, let's leave the realm of myth and move into the cold, hard data, the astronomical evidence that sent shivers down the spine of fringe scientists and, according to deep source leaks, caused genuine alarm among certain global monitoring agencies. The introduction to Comet 3i Atlas, officially C2019Y4, wasn't just another discovery. It was the detection of a non-standard object, a phrase that in astronomical circles is code for "this is behaving in a way our models cannot explain." The key phrase here is non-standard. Most comets follow predictable orbital paths defined by the gravitational influence of known planets. They travel in specific ellipses, governed by Newtonian physics. 3i Atlas, however, originated from the far reaches of the Oort cloud, yet its orbital parameters suggested a highly unstable past. It wasn't just its fragmentation that raised red flags for those studying the Anunnaki Omen. It was the entire geometry of its approach. The object appeared to be hurtling toward the inner solar system at an extraordinary velocity, but more importantly, its trajectory seemed to defy the standard gravitational mapping of the Sun and the major planets. Skeptics claim this is merely a result of complex dynamics within the Oort cloud. However, proponents of the T-planet XQ theory argue that this erratic behavior is definitive proof of an external, powerful influence, the nearing mass of Nibiru. Imagine trying to calculate the path of a cannonball, only to find it suddenly veering off course. You would immediately look for an external force. In space, that force is gravity. If 3I Atlas's orbit suggests a recent powerful perturbation that can't be accounted for by Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, then what is the only logical conclusion? That something massive, currently uncatalogued, is tugging at the outermost limits of our solar system. This is the bedrock of the forbidden awakening theory, the notion that the gravitational wake of the returning Anunnaki homeworld is already scattering the debris field of the Kuiper Belt and Oort cloud. Furthermore, the initial reports on 3I Atlas emphasized its unusual brightness curve. It reached naked-eye visibility faster than predicted, hinting at a large core or an accelerated outgassing process. But its subsequent rapid collapse contradicted this initial promise. It was as if the object was structurally compromised long before it reached its perihelion. This is where the conspiracy narrative hardens. If 3I Atlas was not a standard comet, but perhaps a piece of debris associated with the Nibiru system, its material composition could be radically different, explaining its bizarre reaction to solar proximity. Sitchin's work claims that Nibiru is a highly metallic planet, perhaps a dark star. Debris associated with such a body would naturally behave in a non-standard way when exposed to solar winds, making the fragmentation a telltale sign of an entirely different chemical makeup. The response from official channels cemented the suspicions of a cover-up. As 3I Atlas disintegrated and the public interest peaked, the official message became increasingly dismissive. The object was merely designated as faded. Yet behind the scenes, high-resolution surveillance of the resulting debris trail continued, often utilizing classified deep space monitoring facilities that rarely focus on mere comets. Why expend such immense resources tracking the remnants of a failed comet unless those remnants offered a clue to something far greater? They were tracking the direction of the fragmentation, trying to triangulate the source of the force that tore 3I Atlas apart. This brings us to the visual data. The specific manner in which 3I Atlas fragmented, a long linear stream of dozens of fragments, is what made it look so chillingly significant to proponents of the Omen theory. It looked less like a natural explosion and more like a carefully controlled structural failure, or the remnants of an object that suffered a massive, sharp gravitational shock. This visual evidence fueled the most fringe, yet most persistent claims that 3I Atlas was not natural at all, but perhaps a sophisticated piece of technology, a drone or beacon from the Anunnaki system, designed to break apart upon approach, scattering metallic dust to subtly alter the electromagnetic field of our solar system as a preparatory move for their return. Whether you believe 3I Atlas was controlled or merely a victim of immense unseen gravity, the conclusion remains the same. An object behaving exactly as the ancient Sumerian prophecies dictated has appeared, shattered, and vanished, leaving behind nothing but questions and the chilling possibility that the 3,600-year cycle of Nibiru is closing in. This forbidden awakening is not just an idea anymore, it has a confirmed astronomical marker. Now, before we move on to the actual decoding of the ancient texts that predicted this star that breaks apart, tell me this. Do you believe 3I Atlas was truly natural, or do you suspect manipulation or external gravitational forces? Comment below with Atlas Truth. If you think this object holds the secret to Planet X or Comet Natural, sirs. If you remain skeptical of the Anunnaki connection. Deity, the very name, Anunnaki, rings with controversy. Yet their alleged history is central to understanding why 3I Atlas has caused such a specific kind of panic. To grasp the enormity of the omen, we must understand who the Sumerians claimed these beings were. They weren't just mythological gods. They were described as physical beings, often depicted with wings or riding flying vehicles, those who from heaven to earth came. According to the translations spearheaded by the late Zecharia Sitchin, the Anunnaki arrived on Earth thousands of years ago, escaping the decaying atmosphere of their home world, Nibiru, which was described as a large planet or brown dwarf on a colossal 3,600-year orbit around our Sun. The core theory suggests that the Anunnaki needed gold, not for currency or jewelry, but for a high-tech solution, atomizing the precious metal into fine dust to repair and sustain the atmosphere of Nibiru. This need for resources led them to genetically engineer a primitive workforce on Earth. They allegedly combined their own DNA with that of Homo erectus to create Homo sapiens, specifically designed to mine the required gold. This is the forbidden awakening. In its truest sense, the moment humanity realizes it was created for a purpose, and that purpose may be about to be renewed upon the return of our creators. If this history is true, the return of Nibiru isn't just an astronomical curiosity, it's an existential crisis. The Sumerian tablets, especially those detailing the epic of creation and the Enuma Elish, speak of the crossing of Nibiru not as a peaceful passage, but as a disruptive, cataclysmic event. It describes immense gravitational shifts, massive tidal waves, and global upheaval, the kind of events that reset civilization. And the single, undeniable harbinger of this crossing was the Omen, the star that breaks apart. Now, consider the timescale. The alleged orbital period of Nibiru is 3,600 years. If the Anunnaki Omen were last here during events corresponding to known biblical or geological floods, we are rapidly approaching the next window, when 3I Atlas appeared, exhibiting non-standard, unstable behavior exactly when deep space models suggest an increased probability of gravitational disturbance in the outer solar system. It immediately linked itself to the ancient cycle. It became the physical manifestation of the prophesied sign. This isn't just pattern matching, it's the synchronicity of ancient prophecy aligning perfectly with modern astronomical anomaly. What does the name Nibiru itself mean? In Sumerian, it means the place of crossing. It emphasizes the chaotic path it takes through our established solar plane. Astronomers already accept the theoretical possibility of a massive, unobserved body, often designated Planet 9 or Planet X, influencing the orbits of trans-Neptunian objects. The Anunnaki. Theorists simply apply a name and a history to this hypothesized mass. The significance of 3I Atlas is that it provides empirical, observed evidence of something disrupting the outer limits of our solar system, something powerful enough to tear apart a comet with precision. If the Anunnaki are real, and if Nibiru is approaching, the urgency surrounding 3I Atlas makes perfect sense. They would need an advanced warning system, a beacon perhaps, or the debris trail would simply be the cosmic dust kicked up by their nearing gravitational field. Either way, the fragmented comet serves as the ultimate alarm bell. It means the creators are nearing the threshold of our orbital neighborhood and the forbidden awakening is upon us. Are they returning as saviors or as reapers demanding their resources back? That's the billion-dollar question that hinges entirely on the authenticity of the Anunnaki narratives. The critical link here is belief versus evidence. The scientific world rejects the cultural and historical claims of Sitchin, but they struggle to explain the physics of 3I Atlas without resorting to highly specialized, one-off explanations. Those steeped in the yeoman's theories simply point to the cuneiform and say, they told us exactly what to look for. The appearance of the star that breaks apart is the strongest argument yet that the Anunnaki's cycle is nearing its climax. We are not just debating history, we are debating the immediate future of human civilization under the shadow of Planet X. Now, if you've made it this far, You clearly understand the gravity of the Anunnaki narrative. Tell me what you think their primary motivation would be if they returned. Gold or control? Comment below with Anunnaki gold if you think they're after resources, or Anunnaki control if you think they're coming back to reclaim their experimental project. Us. Let's see what the community believes about the intentions behind this forbidden awakening. To truly appreciate the eerie resonance between ancient prophecy and modern astronomy, we need to focus on the key piece of the puzzle, Nibiru, or Planet X. This isn't just a generic mythical home for the Anunnaki. It is a celestial body whose defining characteristic is its catastrophic 3,600-year orbit. This concept is perhaps the most difficult for mainstream science to swallow, yet it is the gravitational engine that makes the Anunnaki Omen so terrifyingly plausible. The idea of Nibiru, meaning crossing place, is rooted in the Babylonian creation myth, where it is identified as the cosmic body associated with Marduk, the supreme deity. However, in the context of the Sitchin translations, Nibiru is a massive dark planet, perhaps a small failed star, a brown dwarf, or a large gas giant, that spends most of its time in the deepest, coldest reaches of space, far beyond Pluto. Its orbital path is highly elongated, taking it far out before it slingshots back into the inner solar system, crossing the ecliptic plane near Mars and Earth. This crossing is the crucial moment of the forbidden awakening. Why is this 3,600-year cycle so important? If a Nibiru is as massive as theorized, its return causes more than just a passing shadow. It creates immense gravitational tides. Think about the effect the moon has on Earth's oceans. Now multiply that force exponentially. When Planet X passes, it would cause planetary tilting, increased tectonic activity, massive volcanism, and catastrophic flooding. The destruction recounted in global mythologies, the great flood stories found across countless unconnected cultures, are often cited by proponents as historical memory of the last devastating passage of Nibiru. This is where Comet 3 Atlas becomes the central figure. If Nibiru is approaching, its gravitational influence doesn't suddenly appear when it crosses Jupiter's orbit. Its pull begins affecting the distant Oort cloud and Kuiper belt objects years, sometimes decades, ahead of time. The fragmentation and the erratic, non-standard trajectory of 3I Atlas fit perfectly within the expected preliminary disturbances of a nearing colossal mass. The comet, in essence, acted like a cosmic canary in the coal mine, its violent breakup serving as a measurable physical demonstration of a powerful gravitational field rapidly approaching the outer bounds of our system. It's the debris of a larger, unseen storm. Astronomers, even those who vehemently dismiss the Anunnakian connection, have long grappled with the mathematical necessity of an unobserved body. The clustered orbits of distant trans-Neptunian objects suggest that something massive is skewing their paths. They call it Planet 9 or Planet X, cautiously using mathematics to predict its location. The Anunnaki theory takes the mathematical anomaly and imbues it with history, claiming the ancients not only knew about it, but interacted with its inhabitants, the Anunnaki. The fact that 3I Atlas, the alleged Omen, appeared during a time frame when mathematical models for Planet X's activity were heating up is not just coincidence, it's statistical validation for the ancient narrative. The comet broke apart precisely because the outer boundary of its structural integrity met the leading edge of Nibiru's immense gravitational field. Moreover, the ancient texts suggest that the Anunnaki themselves timed their missions to Earth based on the passage of some Nibiru. They need their home planet nearby to act as a transport hub and possibly a resource anchor. If 3I Atlas is the sign of the crossing, then the beings from the heavens are soon to follow. This gives a chilling new context to the escalating global tensions and the focus on space defense and monitoring. Are the world powers tracking the debris of 3I Atlas simply to study comets? Or are they tracking the debris field to map the trajectory of its progenitor, the approaching planet XNO? The very idea of a rogue planetary-scale object entering our system is enough to terrify the scientific community into silence. Adding the historical baggage of the Anunnaki, gods who once ruled the Earth, escalates it from a physical threat to an existential and theological one. The catastrophic 3,600-year orbit of Nibiru is not just a cycle of time. It is a ticking doomsday clock, and 3I Atlas might have been the moment we heard the first unmistakable tick. Do you believe the ancient knowledge of Nibiru is more accurate than modern astronomical predictions that still can't locate the source of the outer solar system's gravitational anomalies? If you believe the ancients had superior knowledge, comment with in 3600 cycle Padu below. If you think the orbit is too fantastical, type A Planet X myth. Let's get to the heart of this forbidden awakening debate. The true shockwave generated by Comet 3I Atlas wasn't its initial brightness, but the bewildering anomaly of its fragmentation. When a comet breaks up, it usually diffuses slowly, maybe breaking into 2 or 3 large chunks. 3I Atlas didn't just break, it essentially pulverized into a massive string of discrete fragments, dozens of them, all aligned in an unnervingly narrow, coherent stream. This is the Omen that drove researchers away from standard comet dynamics and straight into the terrifying implications of the Anunnaki prophecy. Why does this specific fragmentation matter? If 3I Atlas had broken up due to thermal shock, heat from the sun, the fragments would have dispersed widely, like steam escaping a boiling pot. If it broke up due to rotation stress, the pattern would be messy and erratic. But the fragmentation of 3I Atlas was far more structured. It was almost linear, as if the comet had been ripped apart along a straight line of stress. This geometry strongly suggested an external, precise force acting upon the comet's core, not an internal failure. This observation serves as the physical proof for the gravitational influence argument regarding Nibiru. Proponents of VT Planet X suggest that the nearing super-Earth or brown dwarf exerts such immense tidal forces that any object in the far outer solar system, once disturbed from its Oort cloud repose, would be subjected to extreme stress upon entry into our inner system. 3I Atlas, being relatively fragile, would have acted as a perfect pressure gauge for this incoming gravitational field. The string of pearls fragmentation pattern perfectly matches the expected tidal disruption caused by an approaching body of immense mass, far exceeding anything known in our established solar system. But the structural anomaly of 3I Atlas fuels an even more extreme layer of the Anunnakian conspiracy, the suggestion of alleged maneuvering or technological origin. If the Anunnaki created us, they clearly possess technology far superior to ours. Some fringe theories propose that 3I Atlas wasn't a natural body at all, but rather a deliberate probe, a beacon or marker launched from Nibiru, designed to fragment upon crossing the ecliptic plane. Why would they do this? If 3I Atlas contained dense, metallic materials associated with the Anunnaki homeworld, perhaps the gold-laden debris needed for atmospheric protection, its fragmentation would release a subtle, detectable plume of specific elements into the solar wind. This scattered material could potentially be used for navigational purposes, allowing the Anunnaki vessels to lock onto a signature trajectory, guiding them towards Earth after their long 3,600-year cycle. The disintegration in this context is not a failure, but a meticulously planned dispersal designed for the forbidden awakening. Furthermore, the initial reports hinted at a core density that seemed inconsistent with a standard icy comet. This lends weight to the speculation that 3I Atlas might have been encased ice around a much denser artificial core. When the ice shell sublimated or was stressed, the dense artificial material fragmented under tidal forces, releasing the engineered signature. This level of speculation is what the mainstream media avoids entirely, preferring the simple, failed comet narrative. But it's crucial for anyone seeking to understand the complete picture of the Anunnaki Omen. The sudden halt in detailed public analysis of 3I Atlas's structural failure, coupled with the continued high-resolution tracking of the debris field by agencies like the Atlas system itself, suggests something was found in that fragmentation data that simply could not be disclosed. They didn't just lose interest, they stopped discussing it, diverting attention back to routine cosmic events. This is the classic signature of sensitive information being placed under lock and key, information that points directly to the active approach of Planet X and the return of the sea Anunnaki. We are being told to look away while the most significant astronomical event in millennia unfolds. The structural breakup of 3I Atlas is the physical, undeniable evidence that the outer darkness of our solar system is not empty. Something massive is stirring the cosmic dust, something that aligns precisely with the chaotic, destructive return of Nibiru. The key takeaway here is the non-randomness of the event. It was too precise, too structured, and too perfectly timed to be a simple cold coincidence. It was a sign. So when you consider the geometry of the breakup, what makes more sense to you? Was 3I Atlas ripped apart by the immense, non-standard gravity of approaching Nibiru? Or was it a form of Anunnaki technology designed to disperse a signature? Type tidal force. If you lean towards the sheer gravity of Planet X or Anunnaki beacon, if you think this was a technological marker for the forbidden awakening, engage below and let me know your deepest conviction. T, the true test of the Anunnaki Omen. Theory lies not just in the physics of 3I Atlas, but in the visual proof, the stunning and controversial comparison between the comet's fragmented plume and the ancient Sumerian symbol of the winged disk. This comparison, which the astronomical community vehemently dismisses as mere coincidence, is the photographic link between a 4,000-year-old prophecy and a 21st-century cosmic event. For millennia, the winged disk has been the most recognizable icon across ancient Near Eastern civilizations, appearing in Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and even ancient Egypt, where it evolved into the solar disk of Ra. Proponents of the ancient astronaut theory, following Sitchin's work, argue that this symbol is not a metaphor for the sun or a deity, but a literal depiction of Nibiru, the Anunnaki home world, as it appears during its closest approach to Earth. The wings are often interpreted as the planet's gravitational wake, or more practically, as the exhaust or structural components of the gigantic spacecraft the Anunnaki used for transit. Now let's bring this ancient symbolism into the modern era of the forbidden awakening. When 3I Atlas began its spectacular disintegration in April 2020, high-resolution telescope images captured the debris field. As mentioned, the fragmentation was highly linear, forming a structured plume of material streaming away from the main nucleus. Due to the angle of observation and the complex interaction of solar winds with this unique, metallic-laced debris, the image presented a distinct symmetrical structure. It wasn't a sphere, it had lateral extensions. This is where the visual connection becomes impossible to ignore. Observers noted that the fragmented, elongated tail of 3I Atlas, when viewed at certain magnifications, bore an uncanny, almost shocking resemblance to the ancient winged disk. This wasn't just a comet tail, it looked like a highly structured, symmetrical cloud of dust radiating from a central point, mirroring the iconography used to denote the arrival of the Anunnaki. Skeptics argue this is a classic case of pareidolia, the psychological phenomenon where the human mind sees familiar patterns in random stimuli. They claim people are projecting the ancient symbol onto a natural cloud of cosmic dust. But the specificity of the match, especially concerning the dual symmetrical plumes radiating laterally, goes beyond simple random pattern recognition. Why would a natural icy comet break up in a pattern that so perfectly mimics the single greatest symbol of the returning Anunnaki? Furthermore, ancient texts sometimes refer to Nibiru not just as the winged disk, but as the star that shines with a silver aura. If Three-Eye Atlas was indeed heavily laden with metallic elements, perhaps gold dust or other high-density materials required by the Anunnaki, the reflectivity of its debris cloud could have created an unnaturally bright, almost metallic sheen, the silver aura described in the prophecies. The visual connection, therefore, spans not only the geometry of the fragmentation, but also the unique, intense luminosity observed just before the collapse. The critical takeaway here is that the ancients claimed the sign of the Anunnaki return would be visually and structurally unique. The image of the fragmented comet, a structured, symmetrical, wing-like dispersal of bright debris, offers the most compelling visual evidence yet that the Omen is real. It suggests that the Sumerians were documenting an actual celestial phenomenon, one that recurs every 3,600 years, associated with the passage of Nibiru. If the Anunnaki are real, and if the winged disk is a depiction of their transit vehicle or their planet's gravitational signature, then the fragmentation of Three-Eye Atlas wasn't an astronomical hiccup. It was an inter-era communication. It was the universe confirming the ancient texts. This visual proof deepens the mystery, forcing us to ask whether the images recorded by the Atlas telescope are, in fact, the first modern glimpse of the mechanism announcing the forbidden awakening. The mainstream media and scientific community completely sidestepped this visual connection, choosing instead to focus on the boring, technical specifics of orbital mechanics. But for those looking for the real truth, the photographic evidence of the winged disk appearing in the Anunnaki Omen is undeniable and deeply unsettling. Tell me, when you look at the images of Three-Eye Atlas's debris field, do you see a coincidental cloud of dust, or do you see a reflection of the ancient winged disk? Comment below with "Bitch winged disk proof" if you believe the visual match is evidence of the Anunnaki-Ka's return or tant lesser pattern coincidence. If you remain unconvinced by the visual similarity, your perspective on this crucial visual clue matters. It is the very system that discovered the Anunnaki Omen, the Atlas survey system, is ironically central to the conspiracy narrative. ATLAS, which stands for Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, is a crucial planetary defense project designed to give us advance warning of near-Earth objects that pose an impact risk. It's a network of telescopes strategically placed across the globe, constantly scanning the night sky. The very purpose of ATLAS is to identify cosmic threats, and in 2019 it flagged C2019Y4, the object we now know as Three-Eye Atlas. The significance of the ATLAS system in this context is twofold. Firstly, it provides undeniable, verifiable data. This is not some fuzzy amateur photo. This is professional, highly calibrated astronomical data used for international security. When ATLAS flags an object, the entire global scientific community pays attention. This fact makes the subsequent dismissal of Three-Eye Atlas as a failed comet even more suspicious. If the instrument designed to protect us from extinction-level events flagged an object that behaved in an unprecedented and non-standard way, Why did the urgency vanish so quickly once the fragmentation occurred? Secondly, and more compellingly, for the forbidden awakening theory, the name itself resonates with the ancient mythologies. In Greek myth, Atlas was the titan condemned to hold up the sky and the celestial sphere, the guardian of the heavens. In the modern context, Atlas is the guardian against threats from space. For those who believe in the cyclical return of Nibiru and the Anunnaki, the fact that the definitive Omen was discovered by a system named Atlas is not just a coincidence, it is profound synchronicity. It suggests that the sign was delivered by the guardian of the heavens, fulfilling a cosmic role thousands of years in the making. The Atlas system is designed to look for objects on collision courses, but what happens when it finds evidence of an incoming gravitational presence rather than an impactor? The data is far more sensitive because it implies a potential global cataclysm, the passage of Planet X, not just a localized disaster, an asteroid strike. If the raw data from Atlas, the velocity, the orbital perturbations, and the fragmentation patterns of 3I Atlas strongly suggested the presence of an immense unseen mass, that information would instantly be classified under the highest level of national security. The conspiracy suggests that the initial data collected by Atlas was too clear. 3I Atlas was exhibiting orbital anomalies consistent with a nearing massive external gravitational source. This wasn't just a comet wandering in, it was being pulled. Once the object fragmented, confirming its structural compromise due to tidal forces, the official narrative needed to be controlled. The discovery by the world's premier warning system provided the evidence, and the subsequent silence was the mandated cover-up. The very efficiency of the Atlas network, designed to sound the alarm, made the swift suppression of the Anunnaki Omen necessary to prevent widespread panic regarding Nibiru. Imagine the internal communications within the agencies that monitor Atlas data. They track objects every day, but suddenly one object defies all known physics, fragments exactly as prophesied in ancient texts, and displays visual characteristics reminiscent of the Anunnaki signature. The facility designed for warning suddenly becomes the epicenter of a historical crisis, the confirmation of the forbidden awakening. The question is, what other data did the Atlas system collect on 3I Atlas before its fragmentation? Was the trajectory analysis kept hidden because it pointed mathematically toward the orbital path of Planet X? The focus shifted almost instantly from the object itself to the analysis of the debris trail. Why? Because the debris trail offers clues to the source of the gravitational pull. The Atlas system, our most dedicated watchdog of the heavens, is inadvertently holding the secret to the Anunnaki return. If the Atlas system discovered physical proof that the 3,600-year cycle of Nibiru is underway, the subsequent government silence isn't malice, it's panic management. They cannot afford to admit that the myths are real. The fact that this specific system, the guardian of the sky, delivered the sign, adds a layer of cosmic irony that can't be ignored. Do you trust the data collected by the Atlas system? Or do you believe that the most crucial findings regarding 3I Atlas and the Anunnaki Omen have been deliberately withheld? Type Atlas covered up if you think the data is suppressed, or Atlas honest if you believe the system simply tracked a strange natural phenomenon. Let me know your stance on the role of the planetary guardian in this potential forbidden awakening. The ultimate terrifying factor linking Comet 3I Atlas to the Anunnaki isn't just the physics or the visual similarities, it is the chilling consistency with the very specific wording found in ancient texts. We must turn our attention now to the decoding of the Omen itself, how ancient Sumerian and Babylonian texts predicted a star that breaks apart, signaling a major change, the very mechanism we observed with 3I Atlas. The Sumerian tablets and the later Babylonian astronomical records are far from simple mythology. They contain detailed star maps, sophisticated mathematics, and complex orbital cycles. Within these records, especially those describing the return of Nibiru, there are clear references to the cosmic herald. This herald is not described as a steadfast star or a steady planet, but often as a shimmering star, a burning cloud, or most crucially, the light that shatters before the crossing. This specific description perfectly encapsulates the event of Three-Eye Atlas. The Anunnaki Omen dictated that before the immense gravitational field of Planet X fully impacted the inner solar system, a precursor event would occur. This event would be visible, but unstable. For the ancients, watching the sky was a matter of life and death, and they meticulously charted every anomaly. The fragmentation of Three-Eye Atlas, the transition from a bright, coherent object to a spectacular, shattering cloud of debris, is a modern, high-definition realization of that ancient prophecy. It is the star that breaks apart. Why would the ancient texts be so specific about the instability of the herald? Because they understood the gravitational dynamics of Nibiru's return. They knew that a massive rogue body would violently disrupt the Oort cloud, sending icy and metallic fragments hurtling towards the sun. They understood that these fragile objects would be subject to extreme tidal forces long before Nibiru itself became visually apparent. The instability of Three-Eye Atlas, therefore, was not an anomaly to the Sumerians. It was a predictable feature of the Forbidden Awakening. The specific language used in these cuneiform texts suggests a deep understanding of celestial mechanics. Terms that Sitchin translated as relating to crossing and orbit demonstrate that the ancients viewed the heavens not through mystical fog, but through systematic observation. They tracked the 3,600-year cycle of Nibiru and knew that its return would be heralded by exactly the kind of catastrophic disintegration we observed with Three-Eye Atlas. The decoding of this omen provides the historical context the modern astronomical community ignores. When a scientist sees a fragmenting comet, they see physics. When an Anunnaki site researcher sees Three-Eye Atlas, they see the fulfillment of a historical warning. The difference is that the historical warning provides the why. Why did it break apart? Because something massive is approaching. The comet's destruction is the consequence of the nearing presence of Planet X. This connection becomes even more profound when considering the implications of the shattering star signals. The ancient texts are unanimous. The return of Nibiru is not merely an astronomical phenomenon. It is a moment of profound societal and geological upheaval. It is the time of the Anunnaki's judgment or return for resources. If Three-Eye Atlas is the Omen, then we are officially operating under a timeline of dramatic, world-altering change. The greatest evidence for the Anunnaki Omen theory is not just that a comet broke apart, but that an astronomical object, behaving in an unprecedented and structurally unique way, appeared on schedule and disintegrated exactly as described by a culture that allegedly interacted with the inhabitants of Planet X. It moves the entire discussion from "did it happen?" to "what happens next?" The deliberate downplaying of Three-Eye Atlas by official sources can be viewed as an attempt to erase the fulfillment of this prophecy from public consciousness. To admit that the star that breaks apart has appeared is to admit that the 3,600-year cycle is real and the Anunnaki may be on their way. This is the truth locked within the data collected by the Atlas system, obscured by controlled media narratives. We are now faced with a choice: trust the selective dismissal of the modern scientific establishment or heed the millennia-old warning preserved in stone. If you believe the ancient prophecies accurately foretold the nature of Three-Eye Atlas, confirming the Anunnaki Omen type prophecy proven, in the comments below. If you think this is still a massive stretch of coincidence, comment, "Ancient misinterpretation." Your vote helps us gauge the true level of belief in this forbidden awakening. One of the most revealing aspects of the Three-Eye Atlas incident is the sharp dichotomy between expert silence and public panic. This reaction in itself is a classic feature of every major event linked to the Anunnaki and Nibiru theories. The astronomical community, after a brief flurry of excitement over the comet's initial brightness, almost universally dismissed Three-Eye Atlas once it began fragmenting, classifying it as a structural failure and moving on. Meanwhile, in the digital sphere and among those tracking the Anunnaki Omen, the panic accelerated, fueled by the very lack of sustained, detailed analysis from official sources. Why the silence? The official explanation suggests that once the comet fragmented, it ceased to be a scientifically interesting object, posing no threat of impact, and thus warranted no further extensive coverage. But for an object that broke every rule in the book, displaying unprecedented fragmentation, geometry, and speed, this dismissal seems highly suspicious. If a standard comet had behaved so unusually, the world's observatories would have been locked onto it for months, attempting to understand the novel physics at play. The abrupt shift to silence suggests deliberate narrative control. The theory behind this controlled dismissal is simple: the results of a detailed analysis of Three-Eye Atlas's trajectory and fragmentation patterns may have pointed too strongly towards the mathematical necessity of Planet X. To admit that this star that breaks apart was destroyed by the tidal forces of a returning massive body would be to validate the 3,600-year cycle of the Anunnaki and confirm the prophecy of the forbidden awakening. This information is considered too destabilizing for the public. Governments and scientific institutions operate under the principle of maintaining societal order. The confirmed existence of Nibiru, a planet associated in prophecy with global cataclysm and the return of alien creators, would inevitably trigger widespread societal breakdown, economic collapse, and mass religious hysteria. Therefore, the most logical response for regulatory bodies is to manage the narrative by presenting the anomaly as a benign, if strange, natural phenomenon, thus feeding the conspiracy theory while protecting the official facade of stability. The scientific community is tasked with protecting knowledge, but in this case, critics argue they are protecting order by withholding the potentially world-shattering truth of the Omen. The public panic, conversely, is rooted in intuition and historical awareness. People remember the 2012 scares, the persistent talk of Planet X, and the deep-seated cultural memory of ancient floods and destruction. When an object like Three-Eye Atlas appears, fulfilling the very specific criteria of the ancient warnings, the collective subconscious recognizes the threat, regardless of official reassurances. The digital sphere becomes the only place where the non-standard physics and the ancient prophecies can be openly discussed, leading to a proliferation of amateur analyses that often appear more intellectually honest than the bland official reports. This dynamic creates a feedback loop. The official silence fuels the public panic, and the public panic gives credence to the idea that there is something to cover up. The key piece of evidence here is the missing data. Where are the in-depth papers on the fragmentation dynamics? Where are the rigorous analyses of the debris composition? The very absence of deep academic engagement is a smoking gun for those tracking the Anunnaki Omen. If the scientific community was truly interested in debunking the Nibiru connection, they would provide overwhelming, transparent evidence explaining the anomaly of Three-Eye Atlas in conventional terms. Instead, they offered a fleeting, unconvincing explanation and then slammed the door shut, confirming for many that the object was indeed too sensitive. The dismissal is not based on scientific certainty, it is based on narrative control. We are witnessing a historical phenomenon, the fulfillment of a prophecy being actively managed and suppressed in real time. The mass forbidden awakening is proving to be as much about information warfare as it is about celestial mechanics. We are left to piece together the truth from leaks, fringe analysis, and the chilling alignment of ancient texts with a rapidly dissolving piece of space ice. The question remains, who do you trust? The official silence of the astronomical community or the persistent panicked alarm of the public and researchers tracking the Anunnaki Omen? Type trust, silence if you believe the experts have the situation under control, or trust panic if you feel the silence itself confirms the approaching threat of Nibiru. Your engagement here is vital to expose the full scope of this information warfare. To put the fear surrounding Three-Eye Atlas and the Anunnaki Omen into proper perspective, we need to briefly revisit the historical context of previous scares regarding comets and the infamous Planet X. The current anxiety is not new. Humanity has a long documented history of projecting existential fears onto celestial events, but certain incidents stand out because they followed a pattern of profound anomaly and subsequent official dismissal, a pattern perfectly mirrored by the Three-Eye Atlas event. The most famous modern parallel is arguably Comet Hale-Bopp in the late 1990s. Hale-Bopp was an unusually large and bright comet, easily visible to the naked eye for months. However, the fear surrounding it was driven by the persistent rumor that it was accompanied by a massive, shadowy object, a companion often identified as a spaceship or even Nibiru itself, cloaked by the comet's tail. This rumor, though unsubstantiated by direct imagery, led to real-world tragedies, demonstrating the profound psychological impact of linking celestial anomalies to the forbidden awakening. The sheer size and longevity of Hale-Bopp were unusual enough to spark intense speculation, proving that when the sky throws an unexpected curveball, the Anunnaki theories rush to fill the gap left by insufficient official explanations. Another massive scare centered around the 2012 controversy. This narrative, built around a supposed Mayan calendar prediction of the world's end, quickly integrated the Planet X mythology. The rumor held that Nibiru was due to arrive in 2012, bringing cataclysmic gravitational disturbances. While the date passed without incident, the sustained global focus on the possibility of a destructive rogue planet forced space agencies, including NASA, to issue official statements explicitly debunking the existence of Nibiru. The fact that NASA had to dedicate resources to addressing a mythological threat shows the pervasive influence of the 3,600-year cycle prophecy. What makes Three-Eye Atlas so different and so much more terrifying is that it moved the discussion from abstract prediction to physical observation. Unlike Hale-Bopp or the 2012 scare, Three-Eye Atlas provided undeniable, verifiable astronomical data that displayed highly anomalous behavior. We didn't just have a large object, we had an object that systematically broke up exactly as the ancient Omen foretold. This is not a vague date or a blurry image. This is a highly specific celestial action, the star that breaks apart. The historical pattern is clear. Whenever a non-standard celestial body appears, particularly one originating from the deep outer solar system, the fear of Nibiru resurfaces. The official response is always the same: rapid initial curiosity followed by a controlled dismissal aimed at minimizing public anxiety. This historical context suggests that the current silence surrounding Three-Eye Atlas is not a unique event, but the continuation of a decades-long policy designed to suppress evidence relating to the possibility of a large, uncatalogued mass, the very mass linked to the Anunnaki's return. The recurring theme is the alignment of an astronomical anomaly with the predicted cyclical return of the Anunnaki. The timing is always key. Whether it was the fear surrounding major comets or the cultural anxiety of the turn of the millennium, the collective human fear of a great reset triggered by forces beyond our control is always personified by Planet X. 3I Atlas, however, provides the most scientifically robust data set yet to support the physical mechanism of the ancient prophecy. It is the first time the omen has been tracked by sophisticated modern systems like Atlas. The historical incidents serve as warnings. Our reaction to cosmic threats is usually emotional and often based on ancient memory. The current urgency around the forbidden awakening is amplified because the evidence for 3I Atlas as a herald is so much more precise than previous scares. The fragments of this comet are essentially historical residues, the latest physical manifestation of the 3,600-year cycle of Nibiru. Do you remember the panic surrounding Hale-Bopp or 2012? Did those events feel similar to the unfolding of the Anunnaki Omen now, or do you sense a greater, more tangible threat this time? Comment below with "Omen is stronger." If you feel the evidence for 3I Atlas is more compelling than past scares, or same old fear. If you think this is simply history repeating itself, let's analyze the evolution of the Mikey Planet XR threat together. Jamil. The most compelling argument for the significance of 3I Atlas and the Anunnaki Omen is not just the what, the fragmentation, but the why now. Why is the ancient prophecy of the star that breaks apart manifesting precisely in this era? The answer lies in the highly specific cyclical timeline argument, which suggests we are rapidly approaching the culmination of the 3,600-year orbital period of Nibiru. If the Sumerian records are accurate, the Anunnaki are not random visitors. Their visits are dictated by the predictable, albeit vast, elliptical path of their home planet. Planet X. Sitchin and others who follow the ancient astronaut theory place the last major passage of Chisun, Nibiru, the one associated with the Great Flood and immense planetary upheaval, approximately 3,600 years ago, or perhaps a multiple of that cycle. Projecting this time frame forward brings us uncomfortably close to the current era. The cyclical timeline suggests that the influence of Nibiru doesn't suddenly appear. It grows over decades as the massive body begins its inbound journey from the deepest reaches of the Oort cloud. This gradual approach is precisely what we should be looking for in the form of gravitational disturbances among the most distant celestial bodies. 3I Atlas, originating from that distant cloud, acting erratically and then violently disintegrating, provides the first clear physical signature of this nearing influence. It is the cosmic debris field being violently shaken by the approaching gravitational tide of the forbidden awakening. The timing of the discovery of 3I Atlas in late 2019, followed by its fragmentation in 2020, aligns chillingly well with the projected window for the end of the current Nibiru cycle, particularly when considering the mathematical anomalies observed in the orbits of trans-Neptunian objects since the mid-20th century. Astronomers have long suspected the presence of a massive, unseen gravitational influencer in the outer system, their Planet 9. The Anunnaki's narrative simply provides a historical, detailed identity to this mathematically necessary rogue planet. The fact that the first clear physical omen, the fragmentation, occurred when the mathematical probabilities of Planet X's presence were peaking is statistical dynamite for the cyclical theory. Furthermore, the ancient texts often link the passage of Nibiru not just to physical destruction, but to specific historical epochs of human development and crisis. The current era is defined by unprecedented geopolitical instability, rapid technological change, and a profound sense of global unease, a feeling that history is accelerating towards a critical juncture. For believers in the Anunnaki narrative, this societal volatility is not random chaos. It is part of the energetic, gravitational, and perhaps even psychological influence of the nearing crossing. The Anunnaki Center themselves, if they are returning, would be doing so when their transport and resource requirements are optimal, dictated by the proximity of Nibiru. The dimension of Three-Eye Atlas, therefore, is their way of announcing their imminent arrival, not for a quick visit, but for a potentially long stay, a return to manage their creation and retrieve their vital resource, gold. The timing confirms their schedule. If Three-Eye Atlas had appeared and fragmented 50 years ago, the connection to the 3,600-year cycle might have been dismissed as premature, but appearing now, aligned with the mathematical necessity of Planet X, and the window provided by the Sumerian tablets, the timing elevates the anomaly from a scientific curiosity to a prophetic event. We are not just debating an ancient myth. We are tracking the final approach of the most feared body in our system. The Forbidden Awakening is no longer a historical event. It is a present danger, confirmed by the chaotic behavior of a single comet. The critical takeaway is that the appearance of the star that breaks apart is a precise timestamp, marking the beginning of the final approach sequence of Nibiru. The fragments of Three-Eye Atlas are not just ice dust. They are the grains of sand dropping in the final moments of the 3,600-year hourglass. Do you believe the timing of Three-Eye Atlas's fragmentation confirms we are in the window for the cyclical return of Nibiru? Type. Cycle confirmed. If you agree that the why now is critical evidence for the Anunnaki Omen. If you think the cycle theory is flawed, comment. Timing is random. Let's explore the gravity of this cyclical timeline together. If the cyclical timeline is accurate, and Three-Eye Atlas is the physical manifestation of the Anunnaki Omen, the most vital question shifts from when to what. What does the mythology actually say about the Anunnaki's Nesi's second arrival, the Forbidden Awakening? And what consequences might this have for human civilization? The ancient texts, though often fragmented and shrouded in translation controversy, hint at three terrifying possibilities: potential global war, intensified resource mining, or complete societal collapse and reset. The narrative of the Anunnaki's previous visits is filled with conflict, both among themselves and with their human creation. The Sumerian accounts describe immense power struggles among the gods, Enlil, Enki, Marduk, often resulting in massive, destructive events on Earth, including conflicts utilizing what sound suspiciously like advanced weaponry. If they return now, during an already unstable geopolitical climate, their presence could act as a catalyst, plunging humanity into a final, chaotic global war. Imagine world powers reacting to an extraterrestrial, technologically superior force by mobilizing their own defense systems. The resulting conflict could be worse than any conventional war, perhaps fought on behalf of or against the returning creators. The Forbidden Awakening might not be a spiritual enlightenment, but a baptism by fire. The second primary motivation, central to Sitchin's thesis, is resource extraction, specifically gold. If Nibiru still desperately requires gold to sustain its atmosphere, the return of the Anunnaki would mean a massive, rapid scaling up of mining operations. Human society, which has built its entire global economy on complex financial systems, would suddenly find its gold reserves and potentially its global mining infrastructure commandeered for an alien agenda. This would cause an immediate, catastrophic economic collapse, rendering modern currencies worthless and prioritizing the ancient foundational purpose of humanity, mining for the gods. The movements of 3 Atlas would signal the end of human self-governance and the resumption of our ancient servitude. But perhaps the most profound consequence is the potential for complete societal reset. The ancient texts suggest that the Anunnaki view humanity as an experimental species created to serve a specific temporary function. If they find our current civilization too chaotic, too destructive, or simply inefficient, they may choose to prune or reset the experiment. The gravitational disturbances caused by the close passage of Nibiru, the massive earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic activity could naturally achieve this goal, wiping out most of the surface civilization and leaving only scattered remnants for the Anunnaki to manage and rebuild in their image. The 3,600-year cycle would, in this sense, be a recurring planetary cleansing. The fragmentation of 3I Atlas acts as a warning because it suggests the approaching gravitational presence of Tadus. Planet X will soon begin wreaking havoc on our internal system. This is the mechanism for the global collapse. The physical chaos caused by Nibiru will pave the way for the socio-political chaos caused by the Anunnaki's return. The two threats are inextricably linked. The physical passage creates the window for the forbidden awakening. Official sources have a vested interest in promoting the idea that humanity is alone and fully in control of its destiny. The truth of the Anunnaki's return shatters that paradigm, confirming that we are perhaps merely subjects awaiting the return of our architects. The silence around 3I Atlas reflects the terror of governmental bodies, realizing that they may soon face a force that entirely supersedes their authority. This is why the Anunnaki Omen is so chilling. It's not just about a bright light in the sky, it's about the imminent collapse of our established reality. Whether they come for war, gold, or simply to hit the reset button, the forbidden awakening, heralded by 3I Atlas, means the end of human history as we know it. If the Anunnaki return, what do you think would be the most immediate and devastating impact on Earth? Would it be global war, economic collapse, or planetary reset? Let me know your greatest fear regarding the Forbidden Awakening show in the comments below. B. The specific behavior of Comet 3I Atlas, its dramatic, synchronized fragmentation, fuels one of the most controversial yet persistent layers of the Anunnaki Omen theory. The assertion that 3I Atlas wasn't a natural comet, but a controlled object. This fringe concept suggests that the celestial body was intentionally manufactured or modified by the Anunnaki and steered into our solar system to serve as a beacon or structural component for the forbidden awakening. Let's look at the evidence that lends itself to this radical interpretation. As we discussed, the fragmentation pattern was highly anomalous, too neat, too structured, and too symmetrical to be the result of random thermal or rotational forces alone. If the object were a natural piece of ice and dust, the breakup would be messy. Instead, the resulting linear stream of fragments suggested a deliberate failure or a structural compromise along predetermined lines. For some researchers, this looked less like a victim of gravity and more like something designed to fail in a specific, observable way. If 3I Atlas was a controlled object from Nibiru, what would its purpose be? Firstly, as a navigational beacon. By ensuring the object fragmented and dispersed highly reflective, perhaps metallic dust, along a precise vector, the Anunnaki-A's incoming main fleet or exploratory vessels could utilize this cosmic trail as a high-precision marker for their final approach toward the ecliptic plane. The Geomen say wouldn't just be a warning for us, it would be a guidepost for them, confirming the path of least resistance through the gravitational fields of the outer planets. Secondly, 3I Atlas might have been a protective shield or a temporary atmospheric delivery system. Remember, the Anunnaki are allegedly obsessed with gold dust to repair Nibiru's failing atmosphere. If 3I Atlas contained highly dense metallic compounds, perhaps gold or platinum, encased in a volatile, icy shell, its programmed disintegration would release these vital particles into the solar wind. This dispersed material could subtly alter the electromagnetic environment of the inner solar system, creating a more favorable, less harsh environment for the incoming Anunnaki vessels during the Sibisu forbidden awakening. The key scientific argument against the natural comet theory is the orbital anomaly. While Planet X's gravity could explain the breakup, the original orbit of 3I Atlas was highly eccentric and non-standard. If the object was controlled, its unusual path would be entirely deliberate, a trajectory designed to optimize visibility and fragmentation near the inner solar system before the much larger, darker mass of Nibiru itself becomes detectable. Consider the level of technology implied. If the Anunnaki created human beings through genetic engineering, their ability to launch and guide a sophisticated, self-destructing cosmic marker like 3I Atlas would be trivial. The simplicity of the final event, a comet that breaks apart, belies the underlying complexity of ensuring it fragments at the precise time and location dictated by the ancient 3,600-year cycle. The rapid and almost complete official dismissal of 3I Atlas feeds the controlled object speculation. It is far easier for astronomers to explain away a natural failure than to confront the possibility that the comet was exhibiting signs of intelligent design or structural modification. Admitting the latter would mean admitting the existence of the Anunnaki, validating the entire Omen narrative, and fundamentally shattering our understanding of cosmic history. The hypothesis of 3I Atlas as a controlled, manufactured object transforms the Anunnaki Omen from a warning of gravitational catastrophe into a sign of intentional, scheduled invasion or return. It suggests that the Adu forbidden awakening is not passively occurring, but is being actively orchestrated by technologically superior beings from Planet X. The fragments of 3I Atlas are not just rubble. They are remnants of a sophisticated piece of alien technology used to announce the return of our creators. If you believe 3I Atlas was a manufactured object, deliberately steered and fragmented by the Anunnaki to mark their return, type Anunnaki Tech in the comments. If you think the controlled object theory is too far-fetched, even for the forbidden awakening, comment natural object. Let's discuss the possibility of alien celestial engineering. Let's move from the visible, fragmented evidence of 3I Atlas to the unseen mathematical truths that underpin the Anunnaki Omen theory, the rigorous trajectory analysis. If 3I Atlas was indeed a herald of Nibiru, its path through space before and during fragmentation must align with the gravitational pull of the approaching Planet X, and crucially with the specific astronomical charts left by the ancient Sumerians. The Sumerians, who allegedly learned their advanced astronomy directly from the Anunnaki, possess star charts detailing objects far beyond the visibility range of the naked eye. These charts included the trajectory of Nibiru, which was described as traveling against the flow of the other planets, retrograde, on a highly inclined elliptical orbit. This unique path, especially its inclination relative to the plane of the ecliptic, is the fingerprint of the Anunnaki homeworld. When astronomers first calculated the trajectory of 3I Atlas, they noted its unusual characteristics. While it was not perfectly retrograde, its inclination and speed were highly non-standard for a typical Oort cloud comet. For those tracking the Anunnaki Omen, the critical step was to take this modern observed trajectory and map it onto the ancient Sumerian charts of the heavens. The alignment revealed a terrifying possibility. The vector of 3I Atlas's approach, combined with its high velocity, placed it originating from the very quadrant of space where the mathematical models predict the slow, inbound movement of Planet 9, the modern term for Nibiru. But the real link lies in the fragmentation vector. When 3I Atlas broke apart, its pieces continued along a slightly altered path. Analyzing the forces required to tear the object apart along that precise linear geometry allowed specialized researchers to calculate the approximate direction and magnitude of the external gravitational force necessary for the catastrophic event. Multiple independent analyses within the fringe community concluded that the stress applied to 3I Atlas was consistent with the leading edge of the immense gravitational field of a massive, unobserved body entering the solar system from a highly inclined orbit, exactly the geometry ascribed to Planet X in the ancient texts. The official scientific silence on the trajectory analysis is deafening. If the data showed that the comet's fate was governed purely by solar forces, they would publish the results widely to debunk the conspiracy theories. The fact that the trajectory data, especially concerning the non-gravitational forces acting on the nucleus, remains obscure suggests that the raw numbers tell a story the authorities do not want public. That story is the imminent arrival of Nibiru. The Sumerian charts also contained references to a cloud of debris accompanying the Anunnaki crossing, often depicted as the winged disk or a serpent of the heavens. This detail supports the theory that 3I Atlas wasn't just a random event. It was a predicted component of the Nibiru system's debris field. Its breakup was a scheduled event in the cosmic calendar of the Forbidden Awakening. The confluence of three factors, the observed trajectory of 3I Atlas, the calculated vector of its fragmentation force, and the ancient Sumerian star charts detailing the path of Nibiru, presents a nearly insurmountable challenge to the skeptical viewpoint. It moves the Anunnaki Omen out of mere folklore and places it firmly within the realm of predictive astronomical physics. The ancients charted the return, and 3I Atlas confirmed their calculations. This trajectory analysis is why the Forbidden Awakening is gaining traction. It's hard to dismiss ancient knowledge when a modern, observable event perfectly validates its astronomical claims. We are not just looking for a planet. We are tracking the gravitational signature of a planet the ancients knew intimately. Do you believe the highly specific trajectory of 3I Atlas is the smoking gun proving the influence of Planet X, as charted by the Sumerians? If so, comment. Trajectory confirmed. If you think there are other conventional forces that could explain the fragmentation vector, type force explained. Let's dive deeper into the physics of the Anunnaki Omen. The next critical piece of physical evidence supporting the Anunnaki Omen is the gravitational influence argument. The idea that 3I Atlas's erratic movement and fragmentation are merely the first visible signs of Nibiru already subtly affecting other celestial bodies in our outer solar system. The theory commonly referred to as the wobble effect. For years, astronomers have observed peculiar clustering in the orbits of trans-Neptunian objects, TNOs, those distant, icy remnants beyond Neptune. Instead of orbiting randomly, many of these TNOs appear to have their orbital paths clustered or skewed in a way that can only be explained by the immense gravitational tug of a massive, unobserved body, Planet 9, or Planet X. This hypothetical body is believed to be several times the mass of Earth, large enough to exert powerful gravitational forces across vast astronomical distances. The appearance and destruction of 3I Atlas fits this scenario perfectly. If Nibiru is approaching from the deep outer reaches, its gravitational field would not just affect the TNOs, it would begin to destabilize objects in the Oort cloud, sending them hurtling toward the inner system. 3I Atlas is exactly this type of object, a dislodged Oort cloud remnant. Its non-standard orbit and velocity suggest it was recently perturbed by a massive gravitational source, confirming the stirring effect of the approaching Anunnaki homeworld. The wobble theory extends beyond just the TNOs. Advanced proponents of the Anunnaki Omen suggest that the nearing gravitational field of Nibiru might already be causing subtle shifts in the rotation and axial tilt of the major planets, including Earth. While these shifts would be imperceptible in daily life, they could be measurable by highly sensitive long-term astronomical equipment. The ancient texts speak of immense tidal forces and a tilting of the heavens upon the crossing of Nibiru, describing global floods and cataclysms resulting from this planetary wobble. 3I Atlas therefore serves as the observable link between the mathematical necessity of Planet X and the physical mechanism of the ancient prophecies. The comet's fragmentation wasn't a one-off event. It was the clearest external sign that the Nibiru gravitational field is now actively influencing our region of space. The structural failure was the result of the intense differential gravitational pull, one side of the comet being tugged harder than the other by the unseen mass, which caused the clean, linear breakup. This tidal effect, responsible for the omen, is the same force that will ultimately cause the planetary wobble and the global upheaval associated with the forbidden awakening. The key takeaway is that the gravity of Nibiru doesn't just pull on comets, it pulls on the very structure of our solar system. The non-random clustering of TNOs and the anomalous behavior of 3I Atlas are two separate data sets pointing to the exact same conclusion. A massive dark presence is inbound. The fragmentation of the comet, therefore, is the direct physical confirmation that the gravitational engine of the Anunnaki and return is now actively engaged. The official silence becomes even more insidious when considering the wobble effect. To acknowledge the gravitational influence that destroyed 3I Atlas would be to validate the orbital anomalies of the TNOs, confirm the existence of Planet X, and admit that the prophecies of global cataclysm are rooted in physical reality. They cannot afford to let the public connect these dots, the dots of the Anunnaki Omen. We are tracking the physical signature of the coming gravitational shift. The fragments of 3I Atlas are scattered across space, tracing a path that confirms the growing pressure of Nibiru on our fragile solar system. The wobble is real, and the forbidden awakening is gaining momentum. Do you believe the fragmentation of 3I Atlas proves that the gravitational field of Planet X is already actively destabilizing our outer solar system? Type. Wobble confirmed. If you think this gravitational evidence links 3I Atlas to Nibiru, if you think the orbital clustering of TNOs and the comet's fate are unrelated, comment TNO disconnect. Let's delve into the deep space mechanics of the Anunnaki return. The implications of the Anunnaki Omen extend far beyond celestial mechanics. They enter the realm of geopolitics. If 3I Atlas is indeed the herald of Nibiru and the impending forbidden awakening, then the crucial question is, are governments aware of this threat? And are they secretly preparing for something they are deliberately withholding from the public? The answer, according to researchers tracking deep space monitoring projects and defense spending, is a resounding and chilling yes. While the official narrative dismissed 3I Atlas as a natural, if odd, comet, the response from high-level governmental and military organizations suggested a far greater level of concern. Immediately following the comet's fragmentation, there was a noticeable spike in classified deep space monitoring activities. These are not routine astronomical observations. These are specialized projects, often run by military intelligence, designed to track potentially hostile or catastrophic objects entering the solar system. Why allocate immense classified resources to track the scattered remnants of a failed comet? Because they weren't tracking the debris. They were attempting to utilize the debris trail and fragmentation vector to map the path of the unseen gravitational influence. Planet X itself, the Anunnaki Omen, provided the geographical coordinates for where they needed to focus their most powerful, secretive telescopes. The spending on space-based surveillance and planetary defense has quietly soared in recent years, often under vague national security pretexts. While climate change and terrestrial threats dominate public discussion, vast sums are being poured into projects aimed at monitoring the deeper reaches of space, often emphasizing the necessity of tracking non-standard objects with unusual trajectories. This focus directly mirrors the properties of 3I Atlas and the expected characteristics of Nibiru, a large, dark, inclined object. Furthermore, consider the international cooperation that suddenly became necessary around deep space warning systems like the Atlas network itself. While scientific collaboration is normal, the urgency and secrecy surrounding data sharing on objects like 3I Atlas suggests that governments are operating under a shared existential threat assessment. They are preparing for a crisis that transcends national boundaries, a crisis instigated by the cyclical return of the Anunnaki. If the Anunnaki return, the geopolitical implications are staggering. Firstly, the confirmation of their existence would immediately invalidate most modern religious and philosophical frameworks, causing mass societal breakdown. Secondly, their technological superiority and potential demands, gold, control, forced labor, would immediately render human political structures obsolete. Governments are not preparing for an invasion in the traditional sense. They are preparing for the end of their sovereignty. The alleged government preparations are multifaceted. Deep underground bunkers designed to house political elites and preserve key data. Increased surveillance capabilities aimed at detecting non-conventional space threats, and most tellingly, a rigid control over the astronomical narrative, ensuring that the Anunnaki Omen is never officially validated. They are creating a psychological buffer against the forbidden awakening, hoping to maintain control over the remaining population should Nibiru arrive. The silence around the true implications of 3I Atlas is the sound of global governments coordinating a massive, silent deception. They are preparing for the potential collapse caused by Planet X and the return of the Anunnaki, all while telling the public to trust that everything is normal. The fragmentation of 3I Atlas was the moment their secret threat assessment turned into a definite timeline. This chilling geopolitical context makes the Anunnaki Omen far more than a myth. It becomes a state secret of the highest order. The evidence isn't found in a published paper, but in the budget allocations and the clandestine operations targeting the quadrant of space where 3I Atlas originated. Do you believe governments are already engaged in classified preparations for the return of the Anunnaki and the passage of Nibiru? If you suspect a massive cover-up, comment geopolitical cover-up below. If you think governments are only preparing for standard asteroid threats, type standard defense. Let's uncover the true cost of the forbidden awakening. There is an undeniable, chilling coincidence that amplifies the significance of the Anunnaki Omen. The synchronicity of 3I Atlas's appearance with a period of unprecedented global instability. This is not just random timing. For proponents of the Nibiru theory, this alignment suggests a deep connection between celestial mechanics and terrestrial chaos, a confirmation that the forbidden awakening is meant to occur during a global crisis. When 3 Atlas was discovered and subsequently fragmented in 2020, the world was already entering a state of profound upheaval. Societies globally were grappling with an unprecedented health crisis, economic volatility, and a rapid escalation of geopolitical tensions. This period was characterized by a widespread sense that the established order was crumbling, a perfect backdrop for an existential revelation. According to ancient astronaut theorists, the Anunnakians are not aloof observers. Their return onto Nibiru is cyclically linked to massive planetary shifts that historically correlate with the collapse of major civilizations. They suggest that the gravitational and energetic fields emanating from the nearing Planet X subtly influence not only Earth's core and crust, causing geological stress, but also human consciousness and societal stability, leading to mass unrest, conflict, and confusion. The timing of the Omen is therefore critical. If the Anunnaki are intended to return to a planet they view as their property, they would logically choose a moment when the existing human structures were at their weakest and most distracted. Global instability creates the ideal conditions for a forbidden awakening. A population too busy fighting itself, too distracted by terrestrial crises, to effectively unite or resist the intervention of external superior forces. The appearance of 3i Atlas, the star that breaks apart, during this historical nadir of global cohesion is simply too perfect to dismiss as mere chance. It serves as a celestial mirror reflecting the terrestrial chaos. The prophecy is not just about a comet. It is about the total environment surrounding the comet's arrival. The universe, it seems, is preparing the stage for the return of the Anunnaki by first tearing apart the very fabric of human society. The official narrative, by dismissing 3i Atlas as inconsequential, attempts to decouple the cosmic event from the global chaos. They want us to believe that the world's current problems are entirely self-inflicted and unrelated to deep space. But for those tracking the 3,600-year cycle of Nibiru, the connections are undeniable. The subtle wobble caused by Planet X's approach may manifest first as geological stress, leading to more frequent and intense seismic events, and then translate into societal stress, leading to wars, pandemics, and economic crashes. This synchronicity provides powerful circumstantial evidence for the predictive power of the Anunnaki Omen. The ancients didn't just predict a comet. They predicted a period of great fear and breakdown preceding the crossing. The fragmentation of 3i Atlas confirmed the celestial sign, and the simultaneous global crises confirmed the prophetic timing. We are living through the prelude. The terrifying implication is that the instability we are experiencing is not temporary. It is the scheduled, necessary environment for the Anunnaki's return. The world is being softened, destabilized, and distracted, all while the celestial herald, 3i Atlas, performs its destructive signaling role. The forbidden awakening requires humanity to be on its knees, and the current global situation suggests we are nearly there. Do you believe the timing of 3i Atlas's fragmentation amidst global chaos is evidence of a deeper, preordained synchronicity related to the Anunnaki cycle? If you agree that the chaos is linked, type Chaos confirms Omen. Below, if you think global instability and the comet are entirely unconnected, type Random global events. Let's discuss the cosmic preparation for the forbidden awakening. At the core of the Anunnaki Omen lies a fundamental conflict that 3i Atlas has brought into sharp focus, the tension between scientific fact and ancient prophecy. Can we definitively separate the astronomical data we collected on this non-standard object from the millennia-old legends of the Sumerians? The simple answer is, for the first time in modern history, it is becoming increasingly difficult to do so. Mainstream astronomy operates strictly on measurable, repeatable facts. For them, 3i Atlas was a comet whose structural integrity failed due to thermal stress or volatility, an interesting but ultimately non-threatening celestial event. They focus on the physics of ice and dust, dismissing the historical and cultural context as irrelevant folklore. Their framework demands that we are alone and that celestial mechanics are governed solely by known, observed forces. Ancient prophecy, however, operates from a framework that includes historical interaction with extraterrestrial intelligence, the Anunnaki. For those who study the Sumerian tablets, the fragmentation of Three-Eye Atlas is not just physics. It is a communication. It is the fulfillment of the star that breaks apart, Omen, confirming the imminent passage of the Nibiru and the return of the creators. The ancient texts provide the predictive model. The modern telescope provided the confirmation. The power of the Anunnaki Omen lies in the specificity of the connection. If the Sumerians had simply predicted a bright star, the link would be weak. But they predicted a celestial body that exhibits a structural failure, consistent with the tidal forces of a massive dark planet on a specific inclined orbit. Three-Eye Atlas provided a highly unusual trajectory and a highly unusual linear fragmentation that aligns perfectly with the predicted gravitational influence of Planet X. This level of predictive accuracy challenges the core assumptions of the scientific dismissal. To truly separate science from prophecy in the case of Three-Eye Atlas, the scientific community would need to provide an irrefutable, fully transparent explanation for the comet's non-standard behavior. They would need to publish detailed data on the non-gravitational forces, the fragmentation geometry, and the unique chemical composition of the debris trail. Yet, as we have seen, the response has been characterized by brevity, dismissal, and strategic silence. A classic response when the data itself validates the prophecy. This tension is the very essence of the forbidden awakening. If science cannot confidently explain the phenomenon using known laws, and if the gap in knowledge is perfectly filled by an ancient historical narrative, then the myth must be considered a plausible hypothesis. The continued existence of a vast, uncatalogued body, Planet X, is a mathematical necessity acknowledged by science. The Anunnaki simply provide the history and the destructive cycle associated with that necessity. The visual evidence, the comparison of the fragmentation plume to the winged disk, further blurs the line between the two frameworks. Is it mere cultural projection, or is it the cosmic signature of the returning creators? The fact that the object designed to warn us, Atlas, discovered the object, Three-Eye Atlas, that fits the ancient Guardian narrative Atlas, adds another layer of synchronicity that science struggles to categorize as random. Ultimately, the fragmentation of Three-Eye Atlas forces us to reconsider the source of ancient knowledge. Did the Sumerians simply invent sophisticated astronomy, or did they document facts provided by the advanced beings who allegedly created them? If the latter is true, then science and prophecy are not separate. They are two sides of the same historical coin, and the Anunnaki Omen is the moment they converge. We must decide whether to trust the scientific community's cautious omission or the startling alignment of the ancient historical record. The fate of Three-Eye Atlas is the physical evidence that makes this choice mandatory. Where do you stand? Has Three-Eye Atlas convinced you that science and ancient prophecy are merging around the Anunnaki Omen? Type convergence now. If you believe the two frameworks are aligning or data only. If you stick strictly to the observable astronomical facts, regardless of ancient claims, let's debate the future of this forbidden awakening. And we've dissected the physical data, the ancient prophecies, and the geopolitical cover-up surrounding Comet Three-Eye Atlas, the celestial marker of the Anunnaki Omen. We have established that the object's non-standard behavior, its trajectory, its rapid linear fragmentation, and its appearance during the projected window of the 3,600-year cycle aligns uncannily with the historical warnings of the Mai, forbidden awakening. But the ultimate question that binds all this evidence together is the final thought. If the Anunnaki Omen is true, are we witnessing the beginning of the end of human history as we know it? This is not hyperbole. If the fragments of Three-Eye Atlas were indeed scattered by the tidal forces of Nibiru, a massive rogue planet, then we are living in the final prelude to a profound civilizational shift. The Anunnaki's return, heralded by this star that breaks apart, promises either a cataclysmic natural disaster or an imposed societal reset, both of which would terminate the current era of human self-rule. The end of human history as we know it means the collapse of three core pillars of modern civilization. Firstly, the collapse of our scientific and historical framework. The confirmation of the Anunnaki and should Planet Exxon would prove that the foundational narratives of history, religion, and human origin taught for centuries are lies or drastic misinterpretations. This intellectual shock alone would destabilize institutions and belief systems globally. Secondly, the collapse of our political and economic systems. As discussed, the return of the creators, especially if driven by a need for resources like gold, would instantly render all global currencies and geopolitical power structures meaningless. The world would shift from a system of national sovereignty to a system defined by the demands of a technologically superior external authority. Humanity would cease to be the masters of its own fate. Finally, the collapse of our geological stability. The close passage of Nibiru dish is synonymous with cataclysm. If the Anunnaki Omen is real, we are facing an era defined by massive tidal waves, planet-wide earthquakes, and volcanic activity resulting from the extreme gravitational stress. The sheer force of Planet X would reset the Earth's surface, wiping out major population centers and plunging survivors into a struggle for basic survival. This is the forbidden awakening, its natural mechanism for population control. The very timing of Three-Eye Atlas, aligning with intense global instability, suggests that the cycle is closing in rapidly. The subtle Anunnaki influence, whether gravitational or energetic, may already be steering us toward the necessary chaos that precedes their physical return. We are in the final countdown, marked by the scattering of cosmic dust from the Herald Comet. If the omen is true, then our focus should shift immediately from political disputes and financial markets to preparedness and awareness. We are not facing a temporary crisis. We are facing a cyclical, existential reckoning dictated by the orbital mechanics of a dark planet. The official silence is not protecting us. It is ensuring that when the Anunnaki arrive, humanity will be too uninformed and disorganized to mount any coherent resistance or transition. The significance of Three-Eye Atlas, therefore, is its role as the final, observable warning shot. It told us the time, the direction, and the destructive nature of the impending change. If the Anunnaki Omen hook is true, we are not just watching a video. We are reading the final pages of the history chapter titled Homo Sapiens, the Experiment. This thought should force us to re-examine every piece of evidence, every suppressed detail, and every ancient prophecy. If this is the beginning of the end, then every second we spend ignoring the physical proof left by Three-Eye Atlas is a second wasted in denial of the forbidden awakening. Do you feel a sense of impending doom now that you've seen the evidence linking Three-Eye Atlas to the final return of Nibiru? Type the final countdown. If you believe this is the end of history as we know it, or humanity survives. If you believe we will adapt and overcome the Anunnaki Omen, let us know where your deepest convictions lie. We have arrived at the conclusion of this exhaustive investigation into the Anunnaki Omen, an event marked irrevocably by the erratic, disintegrating trail of Comet 3I Atlas. We have analyzed the terrifying convergence of ancient Sumerian prophecy with modern astronomical anomaly, concluding that the fragmentation of this star that breaks apart serves as the physical, observable herald of the forbidden awakening, the cyclical return of Nibiru and the Anunnaki. The evidence presented, the non-standard orbit of 3I Atlas, its precise linear fragmentation pattern consistent with immense tidal forces, the visual alignment of its debris trail with the ancient winged disk, the cyclical timing rooted in the 3,600-year prophecy, and the subsequent telltale silence from global scientific authorities, forms a mosaic that is too detailed and too interconnected to be dismissed as mere coincidence. The astronomical data, stripped of official spin, points mathematically and physically to the approaching gravitational influence of Planet X. The key takeaway is the undeniable reality of the threat. Whether you view 3I Atlas as a natural object violently torn apart by the nearing gravity of Nibiru, or as a sophisticated, controlled beacon deployed by the Anunnaki, the conclusion is the same. Something massive, destructive, and predicted by the creators of human civilization is closing in. The fragments of the comet are not just stellar rubble. They are a geological and historical timeline marker, confirming that the most disruptive event in human history is underway. The geopolitical response, the sudden increase in classified deep space monitoring and the official downplaying of the anomaly confirms that world leaders are aware of a non-conventional existential threat they are unwilling to disclose. They are managing the narrative to prevent the global panic that would ensue if the public understood that the foundation of our existence is being challenged by our original architects, the Anunnaki. The forbidden awakening is thus being actively censored. This is not a story about a possible event. It is a document of an unfolding certainty. 3I Atlas was the sign. We saw it shatter, and now we must confront the implications of that destruction. Planetary upheaval, resource reclamation, and the potential end of the current human experiment. The next phase of the Anunnaki Omen will not be subtle. It will be marked by measurable gravitational effects and, according to prophecy, the physical appearance of the winged disk itself in the heavens. We have provided the evidence. Now, the responsibility falls to you to share this information and ensure the truth about 3I Atlas and Nibiru cannot be swept away by the official narrative. The only way to combat the silence is through engagement. If you found the evidence presented in this investigation compelling and believe we need to continue exposing the truth about the Anunnaki Omen, there are 3 critical things you must do right now. First, hit that like button and share this video across every platform you use. This is how we bypass the algorithms designed to hide sensitive topics like Planet X. Second, if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive, where we will explore leaked intelligence documents related to deep space monitoring. Finally, let us know your ultimate conclusion on the forbidden awakening. After reviewing all the evidence, the physics, the prophecy, and the political silence, do you believe the fragmentation of 3I Atlas was the definitive proof that the Anunnaki are returning? Type Omen confirmed in the comments section below to make your voice heard, or type need more if you require more direct physical evidence before accepting the Nibiru threat. Your participation in this discussion is essential for uncovering the full scope of this historical and astronomical crisis. Engage now.